What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show here, previewing week 2 of the NFL season. John Impemba with Andrew Cooper, bringing you all of the week 2 breakdown, talking about some of the top stories from week 1. My man Coop, we made it through week 1, hopefully unscathed. Some of us maybe not so lucky. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man, especially because Sarah Plesh came up in here talking trash in the chat about our hometown league. Took care of business, no big deal. Won by like 4 points,
Oh,
not a
there you go.
problem.
There
So
you go. I
what's
too
up?
was able to handle my week 1 home league matchup. So I don't know who I have in week 2 yet. I haven't checked it out yet.
I haven't either. All I know is we're back, John.
Yeah,
We're back.
we're 1-0. We're feeling good. It's a tough league, that 14 team.
Probably my most difficult league.
It's impossible when you get to these 14 team leagues. But
Right.
yeah, so a lot of crazy things obviously happened here in the past week. Some things that we were maybe predicting, some guys that we were high on going into week 1 obviously showed out for us. Then, of course, we had some letdown, some interesting splits in terms of snap shares. I know you just did the snap count article. You can go check that out over on Fantasy Time. I know we'll touch upon some of that. What was maybe the most surprising thing in week 1 outside of injuries for you, Coop?
I mean, I got to say, and I'm not just saying this to pump your tires, but you had Puka Nacua as kind of a prop play, a deep throw, one of our underdog moves. And, what was his number set at where you picked higher? It was like, what, 3.5 receptions or something?
Yeah. Well, no, it was like 26.5 yards, something absurd. So we had that. We also had the Zay Flowers reception yards prop in on at 37.5. We went over. I had Puka Nacua as my late weeks waiver wire catching steam guy, which made for a great soundbite.
15 targets. I mean, dude, we crushed those because now looking back, I had I picked lower on Dallas Goedert. He threw up a straight up. Doesn't get any lower, right? Threw up straight 0. So
couple of zeros in week 1. T. Higgins had a 0. Did Drake London have a 0 or something like that as well?
Yes, London had a 0.
Tough zeros there.
The London 0 is more concerning to me than the Higgins 0 because at least Higgins got 8 targets, right?
Right. No, and again, we'll get into that. The timeshare, obviously, in the running backs, a few teams had some interesting running back splits going on there in their week 1. So we'll touch upon that as we break down. We appreciate everybody starting to tune in here. Before we do break down and get into our week 2 previews here, just want to remind everybody that right now is the best time to become a member of the Fantasy Alarm family. You can scan the QR code here on the screen, or you can go to fantasyalarm.com/win. Take advantage of our offer. It comes with a 7-day free trial, which means you join today. You get a 7-day free trial. You get the NFL DFS week 2 content for free as part of that 7-day free trial. And after the 7 days are up, I highly suggest you take a look at our annual subscription package right now. It's 40% off the month-to-month price there. So you get us for a year for almost half off of what you get paying just monthly. So come join the family, get all the content we have, all the premium content we have, our premium Discord. Justin Vreeland's been in there answering all day already. Your late waiver wire pickups, maybe guys you missed on, some start sits. Dan Servididio's been in there. So become a member of the family today. Honestly, there's no better time to do so.
Right. And you can come hang out at Coop's Corner with me, where we just talk ball, get into some deeper questions and stuff. And also, you get all the sports, not just football. So honestly, you can go out and pay for that membership before Sunday even comes here.
Right.
With the baseball DFS playbook, with NASCAR on Sunday. We have the best NASCAR guy in the world in Matt Sells, 3-time FSWA Writer of the Year. So get in there and get that set up. But John, why don't we get in here and get started on week 2, because no bye weeks yet, man. We got a full slate and only an hour to do it. So quick outs. So we get you in, we get you out, we get you all the info you need. So let's get at it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about something again. We talked about some of the week 1 headlines here. Coop, some injury news topping off the show here. Obviously, we know the Aaron Rodgers unfortunate situation there, out for the year, torn Achilles, pretty gross. Slow motion replay that I didn't need to see of an Achilles popping. So unfortunate, sad, all the hype in the world around the Aaron Rodgers New York Jets story all offseason. 4 plays all it took. That's now down the tubes. J.K. Dobbins, another guy, torn Achilles, out for the season for the Ravens. Austin Ekeler is dealing with a little bit of an injury here. We saw Joshua Kelly have a pretty big role in week 1. Deontay Johnson's going to miss at least 4 weeks with a hamstring. Every season, it feels like something is always on the verge of Deontay Johnson missing games. Kenneth Gainwell, surprisingly, the lead back in Philly, lasted about 1 week, trending towards not playing in week 2 with the Eagles having that Thursday game. So that's an unfortunate development there. And then you mentioned some other guys here at the tight end position, Freiermuth, Waller, Kelsey even, right? We're waiting to figure out what's going to happen with these tight ends.
Dulcich is out too. It's like the tight end position is a nightmare right now. So we're trying to figure that out. We're going to sort it out. Today we should get – this is when – so it stinks for fantasy football. If we had a commissioner that actually cared just the slightest about fantasy football, he could make some changes. You know what I mean? Like not having bye weeks in week 14 and instead having them week 8 where there's none, or week 12. I think one of them is Thanksgiving, which understandable. There's no bye weeks then, but spread those out. The other thing is that if there were some way to just kind of require some sort of reporting on a Tuesday where we know Deontay Johnson's out, but you go to these sites, Yahoo, Sleeper, FFPC, you can't move him to an IR spot, ESPN, until the official Wednesday practice or whatever. I mean, it's a real pain for fantasy gamers, but they have already admitted when they talk about the schedule and all these things that they don't care about us, even though we're a massive portion of the fan base and consume more of their product than anybody else.
Right.
But, it would be nice. But like right now, you're just sitting here waiting for them to officially have practice so you can move Deontay Johnson to an outer IR spot. But we're keeping an eye on all those guys. We know Dulcich and Deontay are out, but Freiermuth, Andrews, Waller, we're going to keep it all together. Tomorrow, I'm going to post a big update on that. So we'll get you all that. We hit on the takeaways. Should we get into the matchups, John?
Yeah, let's get into the matchups. Thursday football here. Vikings, Eagles. Eagles are giving 7 as home favorites against Minnesota. A 49 game total. Minnesota lost at home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1. So once again, a disappointing go for Minnesota to start the season. Justin Jefferson is him. He continued to just absolutely ball out. No worries here. But Coop, you pointed out in your snap count, a maybe concerning development in week 1, and it could just be rookie syndrome because we saw this for a lot of rookies in week 1. But KJ Osborne out snapping Jordan Addison in week 1. Addison did find the end zone now.
That's just classic pecking order business. And honestly, the best thing for these rookies is for these teams to lose. It's the best thing. If you want change, the best thing is for the team to lose. If the team goes out and loses to the Buccaneers with KJ Osborne playing 58 snaps and Jordan Addison playing 36 and catching a 30-yard touchdown, then that's a good thing for Addison. You want them to lose, and if you're going to complain, right, don't do what Elijah Moore did and complain about targets when they were on a 3-game winning streak. This is where you say, hey, you know what? I can help the team. We need to change something up. If they lose again this week, maybe they just say, hey, you know what? Let's just put our rookie in there. Let's have him get the full snap share. So this is one instance where I think eventually it will happen. It's just a matter of when. But right now, Addison's he's kind of a tough start if he's going to be the odd man out because this team uses Josh Oliver. They paid him a lot of money. Right. They use CJ Ham. When you have the fullback, when you have the extra tight end, you're not taking Hawk out. You're not taking Jefferson out. So whoever the wide receiver 3 is comes out of the game. So we need Addison to be the wide receiver 2 over Osborne, and then we start throwing him in lineups every single week. Right now, he's more of a if you have to type play, right, John?
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, listen, you're gonna play Addison for sure. I've seen a lot of waiver questions on Osborne, whether he's someone that's worth picking up. I just don't feel like there's any long term.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know if I can play Addison. I don't know if I can play him right now. You can play Addison once. There will come a time where that flips, and that's when Addison goes in the lineup every single week. But right now, if he's going to play 50% of the snaps, I just see if I have somebody else.
You know? Yeah, well, I mean, so I guess it depends on where he ranks. If you're in a 3 wide receiver league, if Addison's your wide receiver 3, you're going to play that in an offense. Now, maybe not this week against the Eagles.
Right.
Obviously, a really tough defense, though James Bradbury is somebody that may not be available for this game. Obviously, take away a top corner. We did see the Patriots surprisingly actually be able to have a lot of success tacking the middle of the field for against the Philadelphia defense. So just something to take clear of there. The Alexander Madison thing, no shock to me. Number 1 running back. Everybody kept on talking about the backups all offseason. It was a Madison day. But the Eagles running back situation is really the interesting one. Kenneth Gainwell had 60% of the offensive snaps. Scott and Swift both saw less than 20%. And Rashad Penny was a healthy inactive, but now we have Gainwell trending towards not playing. You have to assume Penny will be active for this game, but where does the majority of the snaps lie? Does it go to DeAndre Swift? Does it go to Boston Scott? Or does Penny now assume the Gainwell role and is a lead back and goes back to being inactive when he's healthy?
Right. I think you probably do. I mean, I love what I saw at a game. Well, hopefully he can get healthy quick because, I mean, he played like the whole game. Though Nick Sirianni did say that it's kind of funny. He pulled the old, we're all trying to find the guy who did this when it was actually him calling the plays. So, like, he's like, we need to get more targets to Dallas Goedert and we need to get more targets to DeAndre Swift. So I think of those guys, if Gainwell's out, I'd rather just start Swift and try and get a couple receptions, which I trust more than the early down back, simply because of that stupid QB sneak at the goal line by Jalen Hurts, where everyone pushes in the back. Like it's the best play in football right now.
It is.
So, and also just one last thing on, obviously you're starting against this Vikings team. You're starting Devontae Smith. You're starting DJ Brown. I think the over under for receptions are set at 5.5 for both. John, you like either one of those here against this Vikings team?
I mean, I think you have to, right? We just saw Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, led by Baker Mayfield, actually have a lot of success going up against the Minnesota Vikings defense. So, yeah, I think you can play both wide receivers pretty confidently. The fact that Gainwell is out, almost makes me think that they either don't trust the other running backs that they have there. They could look to throw the ball more, but obviously passing against Minnesota is the easier way to beat them. We saw the struggles that Tampa Bay had running the football last week against Minnesota. So, if they don't trust the running backs there and they have to carry a high workload, you could see a lot of passing here against Minnesota. I would obviously play both. If we're betting on them, I'd take the over on their props, probably be in the tops showdown slates as well for week 2.
And before we go to this next game, I just want to say Dallas Goedert last week, if you read the DFS tight end article on Fantasy Alarm, that's paywalled for members, you would have known that Goedert, terrible matchup this week with Kyle Duggar. We had him in the fade section, and this week he'll probably bounce back. It's a better spot for him. So treat Dallas Goedert the way you normally would. You just have to avoid certain guys at tight end. So let's go on to the next matchup, John.
In the first order, the next matchup we have here, kicking out the 1 p.m. games on Sunday, we have the Packers versus Falcons. Falcons are 2-point home underdogs here, with 40.5 game total. Do you think this is maybe a bit of an overreaction of Chicago, the Packers dominating Chicago the way they did versus Atlanta, who won their game against Carolina as a home team, and now they're a home underdog? I kind of like Atlanta +2 here.
Yeah, I agree. I like the bet, though. So my heart says Atlanta. My head says Atlanta. My heart wants Atlanta to get crushed. My heart wants Atlanta to not be able to just run the ball and throw it 18 times and win games. Like, them winning games doing what Arthur Smith wants to do is terrible for fantasy football. It's, if you're a Falcons fan, great. But for us, we want them chucking the football. Right. We don't want what we just saw. So to hit on the Falcons,
I don't even know if they'd be behind you if you'd open that offense up. I think you'd just commit to the run.
They just lose. They just lose running the football. Honestly, they might.
It's crazy the way that offense runs. We saw, again, Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, the workload that they got in that game. They improved their defense during the offseason as well. So they may never be in a situation where they're completely blown out, especially. I don't know if the Packers are that good. I think Chicago might just be that bad.
Right. So yeah, I mean, they were the worst team in football last year. Chicago was. So you can't rule it out. I'll say this on the Falcons side, it's like you start London and Pitts where you have to, but for the time being, I can't start them under this current setup. And once again, just like last year, if you look at the underlying numbers, it's all good. Like, if you take Kyle Pitts and the numbers he had, the underlying ones, and this team throws 30, 40 times instead of 18, he's a high-end tight end 1. He practically led all tight ends in ADOT. He played 83% of his snaps at wide receiver, which was like third most of any tight end. His target share, even 3 of 18 targets, is actually a big target share. It's like, if he just was on a team that threw it, they'd be good, but you can't trust him for now. With this team, obviously you're not starting Ritter, you're not starting Mac Hollins. With Bijan and Algier, how are you feeling about that, John?
I mean, I think if you have Algier, obviously Bijan's an every week starter. That's not even a question. But Tyler Algier, I did some best ball drafts where I kind of let the computer auto pick at the end, and I had some Tyler Algier shares. I was like, what a wasted pick it was on Underdog to auto-draft me this guy, and then he goes out in week 1, has a massive role. So if you have Tyler Algier, maybe you drafted him as a late-round handcuff, or you're in a deeper league and you just picked him up, I think at the very least, he's definitely in flex play contention this week.
Yeah, guys in the chat, I just want to say, guys in the chat, we see your questions. Notorious TBG, Jacob Ander. I'm kind of bookmarking them, and when we get to those games, we'll hit on those. We're trying to keep things in order here for the podcast listeners that don't want to hear a trillion questions. But for instance, I see your question on the Ravens RBs. When we get to the Ravens, I'll definitely pull that right up and we'll talk about it. But we're trying to keep a little order here.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk all questions as we work our way through these games. I think Algier plays. I think you got to put him at least as a flex option. Arthur Smith wants to run the football. They asked him about it. He says, I don't care about your fantasy football team. This is how we're going to win football games. Do I think it's going to be a 65-45 split? Or that's too much. That's too many percentages. 55-45 on the snap count all season? I don't. I think eventually Bijan Robinson will take our larger role. But inside the 5-yard line, Tyler Algier had 100% of the touches, which is not what many people would have expected. You saw Bijan impact in the passing game. He had that ridiculous catch and run there for the score. So, for me, I think both running backs are viable options. If Tyler Algier was available in your waiver wire, I hope you snagged them because Arthur Smith has not hid behind the fact of what he wants to do in this offense. I think the biggest question is going to be is Cordarrelle Patterson practiced. What happens when Cordarrelle Patterson is active for a game because he was hurt? Does he cut into Algier? Is he used at all? Like, how do they go about using Patterson in this offense?
I think he's probably just going to return kicks. Like, I think he's, they got two guys that are the best at what they do. So I'm not too worried about that. And, that's enough on those running backs, honestly.
I'll agree with you. And I see Angie in the chat. I see Reflex there as well. We're going to get to your question.
We're going to get to those.
Don't you worry about it.
So for instance, Reflex has a question. Travis Etienne for Drake London and Miles Sanders. We're talking about the Falcons, so we can get that one up here. I personally, it depends how many wide receivers you have. If Drake London was going to be on your bench, then I think I would do that. And that comes from me, who I'm a big Miles Sanders guy. So if you look at your lineup and Drake London is your wide receiver 4 or 5, and you're probably never going to start him, then I would do that because Etienne looked great.
Yeah.
If London is your wide receiver 4, and which means he's going to be in your lineup for multiple weeks, that's a little bit difficult. So you have to look at always with trades, consider how it affects your roster and your lineup.
Yeah, because think about where you drafted London and Sanders. Those are 2 middle round picks for you. If you don't have a replacement for them, unless you're the one getting Etienne, right. I would probably take Etienne if I'm.
Yes, I like the Etienne side. That's what I'm saying. If you can afford to do it, if you have other wide receivers, and just to wrap up this game on the Packers side, Romeo Doubs are the 2 TDs. We got to see what it looks like. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Watson and Doubs on the outside with Reed in the slot. That's what it was looking like coming in, and they just used Dontavion Wicks as a placeholder for Christian Watson. We'll have to see how it shakes out there. But I will say Luke Musgrave actually led that team in routes run with 24, and he played like 16 snaps at wide receiver. So Musgrave, wherever you can find a spot for him on the bench, I would do it. If you're going yin and yang tight end, I would do it. In a lot of my leagues, I just said, forget it. I'm going yang, and I've got now my rosters are all Kincaid and Laporta, Kincaid and Musgrave and Laporta, and just hoping that it sorts itself out. But this could be the year of the rookie tight end. These guys, a lot of good usage.
Yeah, decent debut for the rookie tight ends for sure. And then the other notable here is the Aaron Jones injury, hurt his hamstring on that touchdown run. If he's out, obviously AJ Dillon looked like trash in week 1, but he'll be the lead back in that offense. So if you have him, play him in week 2. Raiders, Bills here, 8.5 home favorites, 46.5 game total here. Raiders pulled off the upset win in week 1 going into Denver. I think a little bit surprising. Jacoby Myers was an absolute monster in that game. I was joking with a buddy of mine that we snagged Jacoby Myers, the wide receiver 1 in Las Vegas, like round 15. But he got knocked out. So we'll see what the concussion issues there. Hunter Renfrow had 0 targets.
He played 13 snaps.
If Myers is out, though, you have to assume Renfrow steps in, right? So the question really is, like, can you play any Raiders against Buffalo? I feel Buffalo's going to be jacked up after losing week 1 here.
I played Devonta Adams. I played Josh Jacobs because I just don't – I can't put them on my bench. I like those guys. What I spent on them, I can't put them on the bench. But, yeah, I don't know if I'm putting Hunter Renfrow
You're downgrading their projections.
The good news for Jacoby Myers is that when you look at the snap totals, Hunter Renfrow with 13 snaps, that was actually the third most of the wide receivers. They used 2 tight ends with Cooper and Meyer, which neither are viable in fantasy.
Meyer ran 9 routes on 29 snaps.
Just you can't start either of those guys. But because they both played, and because Jakob Johnson, the fullback, played so many snaps, it's going to consolidate the targets among Myers when he's healthy and Devontae Adams, which is good news for those 2 players. So the Jacoby Myers, I'm adding pretty much anywhere where I, where he was on waivers. He was like 50% on Yahoo. So I didn't have many leagues. My leagues are usually kind of deep, but there was a couple spots where he was potentially available.
Yeah, in week 1, obviously, the Bills struggled. Josh Allen had 4 turnovers. Gabe Davis didn't do much of anything. I think that turns around here against Las Vegas. I think they all have bounce-back games. So I'm in on everybody. Dalton Kincaid looked pretty great. Obviously, we talked about that going into the year. They told us, Scoop, you say it all the time, they told us how they're going to use him, and they did not lie about it.
Right. Brandon Beane straight up said he was going to play slot. He played 47 snaps at wide receiver, only 8 in line. And honestly, Dawson Knox played a ton of wide receiver too. They were just mixing and matching these guys at wide receiver with Gibbs and Gabe Davis. Diggs and Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis was just useless this week, but he'll be who he is. A guy that, sometimes he doesn't show up. Sometimes he gets 4 targets and scores 2 touchdowns. So know who Gabe Davis was. He was a best ball type guy. James Cook was awesome. So that's great news.
Which I had more exposure than I do, honestly, because I was in on Singletary as I was last year. The problem was Cook was a little bit more pricier this year than Singletary was last year. But yeah, though there were some people out there, Coop, that were touting anti-James Cook propaganda on Twitter heading into the year, and I just didn't feel like they were actually understanding how he was going to be used in the offense. And week 1 played out exactly as I hoped here. Andy's got some questions. You want to throw one out there?
This one involves the Bills, so we're getting it up there.
Go for it.
Yeah, so he says, in 2 leagues, I did a late discount double Dalton tap. Love that strategy. One of my patent strategies with Dalton Schultz and Dalton Kincaid. Wondering if I should drop Schultz for guys like Hurst, Henry, or Ertz. So with the success of Kincaid week 1, just in terms of usage and everything, I'm willing to get more risky. So Schultz, his usage was good, and we'll get to him. But I'd be willing to drop him for Ertz if I can get Ertz for free, just considering 10 targets is 10 targets, or Hayden Hurst. Hunter Henry that one feels a bit lateral of a move. So
it's interesting though. Again, 2 years ago, Hunter Henry tied for tight end leading touchdowns.
Yeah, and we'll get to him for sure. It's just with some of these teams, everything's in place. Like the Bills, there's nobody that's coming to join the team that's been hurt, whereas with the Patriots there might be. So the important thing is you have Kincaid. Whoever, honestly, those other guys are so close that just pick your poison.
I would agree. Let's move on to the next game here, Coop, and we'll continue to hit your questions. We see them. Ravens, Bengals at home, given 3.5. It's a 46.5 game total. Ravens, they did okay against Houston, but they really weren't that impressive outside of Flowers. The Bengals got blown out on the road against Cleveland. Does it make sense for them to be 3.5 home favorites here? What's your thoughts on this matchup?
I mean, it's crazy because both these teams look bad. This is one that personally, the way I go about my gambling is I don't like to touch games like this where both teams I think are good and underperformed last week. So if anything, I'll take the Bengals at home. But it's just too much uncertainty there with these two teams. And the thing that scares me is you look at Aaron Rodgers had the calf strain turned into an Achilles. Everyone remembers Kevin Durant had the calf strain, played Achilles. Yeah. And then, Joe Burrow's got this calf situation and he did not look good. And I'm just wondering, like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Yeah. If he has any sort of soreness or anything, I would just throw Jake Browning in there and lose this game, to be honest. Like, you know what? It's worth losing a game than having an Achilles injury that could have permanent damage to your career. So but if he's fine, he's fine, right? But like, just that's the way I would handle it. It's not worth it, right?
Yep. For the Ravens here again, Flowers was everything I had hoped for. I saw somebody tweet out though he only had a 2.9 ADOT. I know you are an low ADOT guy, but Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to produce.
Exactly.
So don't care. I'll live with Flowers being that guy.
For where you got him. That's the thing, though, is like targets are everything. So obviously, at the very top, that's the difference. Is that like the 7-yard ADOT for ARSB caps the ceiling, but we're talking about first, second round picks. We're talking about later. Just give me the targets. I don't care. 1 yard ADOT, I do not care if he's getting 10 targets. So
yeah, Flowers is legit. I don't really care for much else. I want to see what happens when Andrews comes back and what that Ravens offense looks like.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, T. Higgins' usage was good. The Bengals on paper were exactly what we thought. It was the 3 wide receivers, Joe Mixon playing all the meaningful snaps, Irv Smith just kind of hanging out. So, like, if you plan to start these guys, I would not change it over one game. We do have 2 quick questions that involve the Ravens. We got one right here. He asked about Fab. He goes, $25 was spent on Hill Edwards, and he dropped 0, got Melvin Gordon. Who is smarter? Time will tell. But the thing with Melvin Gordon is that he was a healthy scratch, and any team could have signed him, even signed him off their practice squad. They didn't. So I think it will probably be Hill Edwards. But the question is whether they blew their Fab or not. So, I would, depending on the situation, if you have the spot for free for Melvin Gordon, it could work out for you if it's a split. So
I don't feel like any of these running backs now are going to be that productive in fantasy.
Right.
Gus Edwards, maybe Hill had 2 touchdowns, but he had less yards than carries. So
and you're still playing with Lamar Jackson, who is going to take as much of the red zone work himself, and he also doesn't really like dumping down to the running back because he's if the running back is standing next to Lamar Jackson, it's the running back's job to go block somebody. He's not going to flip it over like Drew Brees would do.
Plus, they're going to have a game plan now put in place, knowing that Dobbins isn't going to be part of their offense, so that will change some things there for them.
Trade Waller and Gibson for Andrews. Antonio Gibson? Oh my God, dude.
Yeah, because that's basically a Waller for Andrews trade. So
that's what I'm saying. Gibson,
I would take Andrews for sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back to the game.
Seahawks Lions. This is an interesting one. So the total on this game opened at 51. It's now down to 47.5. Now it opened early. It was an early line look. It's gone down to 47.5 and kind of stayed at 47.5.
I can't figure that out, dude. I can't figure out why that would be the case.
They lost a couple of offensive linemen. Both of their tackles for Seattle were hurt in that game. Seattle's offense obviously looked very bad. So I think people are expecting the Lions defense to kind of hold Seattle down in this one. The Lions are 5.5-point home favorites here. Just a very interesting big line drop like that. Tyler Lockett was checked for a concussion, did come back in play. The last time these 2 teams met last year was that game that scored 93 total points.
Yeah.
So I do think it's kind of interesting how this game's going to play out. I think the comments for about Jahmyr Gibbs last week from Campbell, talking about how they just want to sort of get his feet wet against Kansas City and his role is going to expand as the season moves along. Does that mean in week 2 at home his role expands? Because he looked pretty explosive and actually for a guy that only played 20% of the offensive snaps to come out with like 8.5 fantasy points, I'm still willing to play Jahmyr Gibbs if I have him. I don't, his upside to me is still very high. He's probably more comfortable as a flex play for a lot of people. You always say where you drafted him, you kind of have to play him. I'm expecting both running backs to continue to be pretty productive here for the Lions.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like they could easily be this year's Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, where David Montgomery is Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara is Jahmyr Gibbs. And in 2017, Mark Ingram was RB7 and Kamara was RB3. So it's entirely possible. Gibbs, he looked so good. It was crazy to me when I did the snap count article and I saw that he only played 19 snaps because those are some of the 19 of the best snaps I've ever seen.
He almost scored a touchdown. He tripped himself up. If you remember, he cut out to the outside. He would foul. He would have had a score.
So he's looking good. Laporta, very close to ideal. I mean, as far as rookie goes, 5 targets in the first game is great. I want to see him break some tackles. That's his MO. And a couple of those he should have broken. I was very surprised. And the other thing, slight concern there, where if it happens again this week, I'll move Luke Musgrave ahead, is that he blocked on 5 pass plays, which this guy, they're using him in line some, and I don't like that. That nobody wants to see a guy like this, who is basically a wide receiver, blocking on pass plays. Sure. Just a reminder, everybody in the chat, we're going to hit on your questions when we get to a game that involves those players. So feel free to throw them in there. And we're going to do our best to hit them, but we don't want to
do our best to get all the way down here. Kenneth Walker looked great. I'm not too worried about Geno again. Week 1, I felt like this was going to be a tough week for Seattle, and DK Metcalf said he couldn't name a single person in their secondary. We talked about it on this show. I'm like, you just don't give guys that bulletin board material. Sure enough, defense shows up, shuts everybody down. So
exactly.
I'm happy running right back here with Seattle. I guess if their tackles are both out, though, Aiden Hutchinson probably going to have himself a field day there against Seattle. Maybe a lone worry there.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be fine. Keep an eye on the Lockett concussion situation.
He did bring into that game, but I guess something to continue to view, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be good to go. And any concern for Geno, John, before we move on to the next game, or you
No,
just
no, no.
yeah.
I'm still going to play him again. Week 1, I feel like this is a good spot for them to go and attack. Again, people will look at the Lions defense and see how Kansas City scored, but that was more self-inflicted Kansas City issues than anything the Lions are doing. Kadarius Toney dropped 2 wide open passes. Like, he catches those, more points are on the board, and the Lions defense doesn't look nearly as good as people thought. So, willing to go there. Colts, Texans here. Texans are a 1-point home underdog at 39.5 game total. Expecting Moss to be back here. Evan Hull went on the IR. Thoughts on this game here? Anthony Richardson looked pretty good. They said he would have gone back in the game if it mattered for anything. So willing to continue with the Colts here.
Richardson looked awesome, man. We forget that when watching the game, people are like, oh, yeah, okay, that's good. People forget how bad it could possibly be. Like, we didn't know who this guy could be. I've seen really
65% of his passes were completed. People thought he couldn't throw the football.
Remember the Malik Willis's first game last year? It didn't even look like football, man. Anyone who's seen Kendall Hinton play or even like Josh Rosen, like but it's bad. It doesn't even look like football. So the fact that he went out and ran for a touchdown and threw for a touchdown, just running for 40 yards and scoring a rushing touchdown, that's 10 fantasy points. That's all I need.
That's what we talk about here with fantasy quarterbacks, right? So
yeah, I said I was playing it safe in a league. I was, drafting Goff and Richardson. I started Goff. I dropped Goff to waivers. I'm just starting
Richardson the rest of the season.
Yeah. Michael Pittman played like every snap, which is awesome. Alec Pierce played opposite him, playing a full snap share. Josh Downs was out of the slot, but he got pretty decent usage. And then, for DFS purposes, Kylan Granson, if Andrew Ogletree and Jelani Woods are out again, and Jelani Woods obviously can't play for the first 4 weeks, Kylan Granson is a DFS dart throw. Can't throw in the real lineup.
Put him in the contrarian corner video last week, the bargains video last week. Kylan Granson is perfectly fine. For Houston here, Robert Woods.
Real quick before we move on from the Colts, we have a question for this game. Would you start Geno or Richardson?
Man,
Richardson has the injury, right?
I want to go Geno, I think, here. I know that Weapon X says he's leaning A-Rich. I get it. I do. I think the Texans defense might be like halfway okay.
Yeah.
So again, their coach there coming over from the 49ers was a defensive coach. Their defense might be a little bit better than people think this year. And you have the fact that Houston's at home here. So
and this game, the over-under is 39.5.
Yeah.
It's going to be one of the worst games of the week, most likely, versus the other one, which it opened at 50. Now it's at 47.
Still at 47.5.
Yeah. So get Geno in there. And honestly, if Geno falls in his face again, then maybe you just drop him.
Yeah, but I would go Geno here 1 week again. He's got Metcalf, Lockett, JSN, like a lot of great weapons here against the Lions. So I'd rather trust that for this week. And like Coop said, if it doesn't work out, we move on. Houston side. Again, Robert Woods for me looks pretty good. Anything else for you?
Yeah, Nico Collins, both of them got double-digit targets. And Schultz had good usage, but didn't really get the looks. He played like every snap, only blocked on one pass play, which is good. That was a concern, is he was blocking a lot of pass plays. So Schultz is still a potential option if you need him. Kind of boring, but whatever. And then the split for Pierce, we thought Singletary might be the pass-catching back. He wasn't, but Mike Boone was. So we still got rug pulled a little bit. Pierce, maybe not. Like, you wanted to see Pierce go out and play the snap shares that Rashad White and Travis Etienne did, and he did not do that. So there is some concern there.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, let's keep on going here. We got about a half an hour left in the show. Some more games to get to. Chiefs Jaguars is going to be probably the funnest game to watch of the week here. Jacksonville is a 3-point home underdog. Totals 51, highest on the board. We saw the struggles for the Chiefs, though. Obviously, no Travis Kelce. Kadarius Toney had his issues. Sky Moore had his issues. Rashee Rice looked great. Pacheco was obviously the lead back, but we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually start that game. So a lot of questions need to be answered with KC, which could just be solved if Travis Kelce just is active for this week.
Right. If Kelsey's back, then there's room for maybe one fantasy relevant wide receiver, but maybe not. Right now, the guys I like are Sky Moore, who at least played the snaps, and Rashee Rice, where we're hoping his snap share goes up. They did look for him in some key situations. Obviously, he scored the touchdown. So those are the guys I'm most interested in. MVS, if he ends up playing the full snap share opposite Moore, then we're not going to have any other fantasy relevant player.
Right.
Darius Toney, that's another one where I was amazed at how bad he could play on so few snaps. Like, he hardly even played. How could he make so many?
He might have played more if he wasn't dropping the football. That's my only thing here, right? Like, he had that drop interception. Then he was on the sideline for like 2 straight series. Comes back out there, then has that drop in the middle of the field. Like, I think that his drops kept him on the bench.
If you had asked me, I would have said that he played 40 snaps or 30 snaps just on how many plays bad plays he had. He only played 16 snaps. That
But
means
he was targeted a lot. So
he
when
was
he's on
targeted
the
like every
field,
time he was out there.
when he's on the field, they looked at him.
So yeah, there's still some, the upside's potentially there, but man, that was pretty bad.
We got a question in here about Zay Jones.
Yep.
Now, surprising usage here, I think, for many. When we got Calvin Ridley, who looked as awesome as I expected him to, we thought Christian Kirk would move down to be the wide receiver 2, Zay Jones would be the wide receiver 3, and here we go. It ended up being the opposite. Zay Jones actually played more snaps than Calvin Ridley did, played 90%. And then Christian Kirk got the 60% snap share coming off the field. So, how confident are you now having Kirk in your lineups? And is Zay Jones a full go now as a weekly play for you?
Yeah, and honestly, this has always been my concern for Amon-Ra St. Brown over the long term, is that what happens if you're a pure slot wide receiver is when the team adds a split end and adds a flanker, they have a decision to make. Teams like, and I think Amon-Ra St. Brown at this point might be safe, and he might go the route of a Cooper Kupp or Chris Godwin or Keenan Allen, where they play slot and 3 wide, but for 2 wide receiver sets, one of the other guys comes out and they move out wide. That's what happens with Cooper Kupp. What happens with Chris Godwin? Yeah. In this case, he went the Tyler Boyd route, where they have T. Higgins, they have Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd's coming out. In this case, it's Ridley and Zay Jones staying in, and Kirk coming out crushes his upside.
So Weapon says, are we worried about Kirk? Chad wants to know Zay Jones usage. So are you flipping them now and how you go about, or is Kirk still like a weekly flex wide receiver 3 for you? How do you handle them if you're in your lineups on a weekly basis?
Zay Jones definitely had a Kirk now, and he's the better bet. The problem is, like, this team, they're going to play matchups. Zay Jones last year played this role, and when they played Sauce Gardner, they played Jeff Okudah, he did literally nothing, and they just go to Evan Engram, they go to their other options. So I think it's going to be tough from week to week with this team. And we had one more question involving these players. 10-team half PPR. Should I trade Zay and Kyron Williams for James Cook? My answer to that would be yes.
Yes, you're selling high.
Yeah, he had a follow-up question where he said the word Jones. If that's Zay Flowers, the answer is no. But if that's Zay Jones, the answer is yes. And I also saw another.
Say it was Zay Jones, or you're asking him?
He said Zay Jones. He said Jones in another question, so I think it's Jones. But let us know in the chat if it's Flowers. Then keep Flowers.
He says he lost Dobbins and only has Jones and Montgomery. So yeah, David, give us a full scope on what exactly we're looking at.
Because that could be Aaron Jones. Yeah, if it's Zay Flowers, keep Flowers and Kyron Williams.
Yeah, I only have Jones, Montgomery, and Kyron at running back. So he's trading Zay. Yeah, let us know if it's Zay Jones or Zay Flowers, and we'll be able to give you a better idea here. We talked about this game already, so we'll get to it quickly here. Justin wants to know, he has Charbonnet in a 5-spot bench. Gainwell's a free agent. Do you grab Gainwell?
I think I do, man. Charb's only played 11 snaps.
Yeah.
Just gross. He played the same number of snaps as DJ Dallas.
Again, it could just be the rookie week 1 thing, but not great usage there.
Gainwell's already the starter.
Let's move it on. Bears, Buccaneers. Buccaneers giving 3. It's a 41 game total here. I am not obviously the biggest Baker Mayfield guy. Exactly, I'm complete opposite, but I do love the Buccaneers this week. I think we can go ahead and just lock in Godwin, Evans. I'm not playing Baker, but I think those 2 guys are locks for a lot of lineups for DFS for sure.
It's easy with this one. Evans, Godwin, you start. Rachaad White, you start. Cade Otton played 66 or 68 snaps, blocked on 7. If a wide receiver ever gets hurt on this team, now we consider him. But for now, he's just kind of like a DFS start throw. And that's it for that team. The Bears are the more interesting team, right?
Yeah, I mean, what do you do? Right? They did not look good offensively at any level in this game against Green Bay. Now they go up against Tampa Bay. Do you trust them at all?
No.
I mean, you're playing Fields if you have them.
Right. It's a 3-headed monster. The thing with Fields that's crazy, and I don't want to go too long because I know we got a lot of games to hit, but Justin Fields, he threw 37 passes and everyone's like, oh my God, yes. But if you go to Pro Football Focus, it's the same as last year, really, in terms of usage. They called 54 dropbacks, which is 52 dropbacks, which is a ton. It doesn't happen often. He only threw it 37 times on 52 dropbacks, right? That's 71%. Last year, every single quarterback in the league that was a starter threw the ball on at least 80% of their dropbacks. The lowest besides Fields was 82.
Yeah. And
the guys in the other mobile guys, Hurts, Allen, Lamar Jackson, they're living at 84 to 86. All the non-mobile guys are throwing it on like 97%, 95. When the pass play is called, they throw the football, right?
Yeah.
So Justin Fields last year was at 71%, and this year he's at 37%. it's not that they weren't necessarily calling pass plays last year. They were calling 30 a game. He was only throwing it 21 times though. So that it does concern me. I want this guy to throw the football when they call pass plays. And I know you got to scramble sometimes, but if you're taking that many sacks and scrambling and throwing things that don't even count as attempts, then DJ Moore is going to be useless. Darnell Mooney, obviously Claypool
is useless anyways. Now we saw the highlights of him walking around there. Guys, we see your questions coming in the chat. We promise you we'll get to answer them. We're going to continue our game breakdowns here. So just stick with us. We will answer those questions before we get out.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Chargers, Titans here. Titans home getting 3 points, 45.5 game total. Ekeler is obviously the news here because we saw Joshua Kelly with a big role in week 1. Now Ekeler a little bit banged up. How are we handling this situation? Obviously, it's a wait and see with Ekeler, but is Joshua Kelly now filling into like that Tyler Algier role, like someone that we can now trust on a weekly basis, maybe as a flex play?
Yeah, I hate adding players. Like in an ideal world with the handcuffs and handcuff pluses, it's a Alexander Madison or a Tony Pollard where we think that they're at least talented. Like Joshua Kelly, I just worry that I hate adding players off waivers that I don't think are like that.
Are very good.
Yeah. Right. Like I'm adding like Joshua Kelly. Just sometimes you have to. I'm adding Joshua Kelly, Justice Hill. But like I've seen these guys play. You know what I mean? There's a reason they haven't been playing. There's a reason that when all the Chargers needed to do was get a couple first downs to win against the Jags, they couldn't do it. So it does concern me there. With Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, you start both guys. Josh Palmer, like even if Quentin Johnston surpasses Josh Palmer, he's still the third target. Yeah. So Gerald Everett, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, I'm not even sure I'm rostering players like that.
And they said here, just not answering the question, because you can't believe QJ tricked me here. They told you he was the fourth guy on the depth chart. They told you it was going to happen. So the Titan side of things here, are you overreacting to the Tajay Spears, Derrick Henry split?
No, not necessarily. I mean, the thing is, you got to look at snap share. Sometimes when guys just make big plays and make a lot of good plays, they come out of the game. Like look at Tyreek Hill's snap share. He was coming out of the game because every time he was in the game, he was getting the ball and running for 20, 30 yards.
So Derrick Henry's like 60-yard run. He's just tired, He
played like a 66% snap share because every time he was getting in, he was gassed. And he was like, I need to come out. Derrick Henry was, he had the big screen. He had all these other plays. Henry would have led this team in snaps, I think, if he wasn't, if he didn't have how many carries? 15 carries, something like that. So like he had a ton of carries. He caught some screens. He's going to be fine. But
I like Henry a lot in this matchup this week.
But Tajay Spears also, why not? Like if he's going to be the pass catching back, he's worth taking a little stab on. It's obviously don't expect Tajay Spears to play more than Derrick Henry every week.
Yeah, I will say it's interesting. For a while, we've always taken a running back behind Henry, but it's never been a guy that made any sort of impact in fantasy. And right away, week 1, Tajay Spears made an impact. So it could just be a point where they were getting ready to ramp up a guy and take some of the workload off of Derrick Henry. We've been talking about it for years, how he feels like he's overworked. So
yeah, I'll say this. And also Chig, we were mostly doing him in best ball after they signed Hopkins, but dude, that flea flicker that Tannehill just threw over his head, that should have been a touchdown.
That should have been it.
Let's get the 4 o'clock games
for sure. 4 o'clock games, Giants, Cardinals at home, getting 5.5. It's a 40 total here. I can't take anything from the Giants game. They were just blitzed from the moment in a hurricane. So I just wash it, I reset, and I assume that this is their week 1 game. Gonna give them an opportunity to everything. All of my perceptions of the Giants last week, I'm just gonna carry that over into this week, and I'm ready to ride. So
yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, well, except Waller's banged up, so you got to figure out what's going on there. But Saquon Barkley, you start him. The thing is, none of these wide receivers played a full snap share, so I don't know. Watching that game made me want to sneak Wan'Dale Robinson onto some benches.
I'm just saying, like I said, I don't think we can gain anything from what happened in week 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and play. How banged up's Waller? Is it still the hamstring that he's
hamstring still? Yeah, so he's probably getting better here. Yeah, I mean, dude, and they just dragged Daniel Jones through the mud. They should have pulled him from that game way earlier.
They were talking about it on the Sunday Night Football. They're like, when do they take him out? And they just kept on letting him play. Listen, your Michael Wilson play right now. The yardage and production wasn't there, but the snaps were. So
snaps are there.
That's what you're looking for.
The team. He led the team in snaps. He is the starting split end for this team. He's bigger than all these other guys, so it makes a lot of sense. So I'm stashing him on benches wherever I can.
Yeah.
Rondale Moore's a slot guy. He played a partial snap share. If it's like you can't roster that many Cardinals, so I'm holding on to Wilson and Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz. Obviously, he seems fine. Knee's fine. 10 targets. So he's a guy that he moved way up in my yin and yang rankings on the yin side, safe side, because he's not going to really break. He's not going to really have a bunch of 100-yard games because he's target dependent, but I mean, he gives you a nice floor. And then James Conner, full down back. So we're feeling good about that.
Yeah, not really a great matchup, I don't think, for the Cardinals this week, but definitely guys to keep forward. 49ers, Rams. Rams are getting 7.5. It's a 44.5 game total here. Brandon Ayuk was ridiculous in that game against Pittsburgh here. CMC, shocker, number one running back there. Awesome. 49ers. How much is the 49ers offense is it that – I mean, I guess we have to be impressed, right? We thought Pittsburgh's defense at home was going to be something. So 49ers are the real deal here.
Yeah, I'll tell you. And again, this is another one of those teams where Kyle Juszczyk's going to play 40, 50% of snaps. Then that consolidates it among Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, and CMC. So just start them where you got them.
Yeah. Ram side of things, I mean, I don't know if I trust repeat production here out of Puka and Tutu Atwell, but obviously you pick them up. You probably have to play them this week against the 49ers. Just know that the 49ers defense is going to be better than Seattle's defense. So take that into consideration.
Here you go. We got a question. When you hit on the Rams, which receivers would you be playing Puka Nacua over in full PPR? Honestly,
who's on your roster to let us know the players, because there's a lot of questions there. So
we moved him way up. I got him in like the wide receiver 3 range though.
Yeah.
Like there's just too many good wide receivers in this league to get too crazy and say, okay, this guy had one good game, so now we start him over T. Higgins, right? Or we start him, you know what I mean? So it's like
he's just as likely to play behind Van Jefferson this week than he is to do what he did. So I mean, production-wise too, again, it's a very, very tough matchup. So
I'll tell you, 49ers saw that game.
Yeah, downgrading a little bit here this week, but yeah, wide receiver 3, play him. Running backs was a little weird. Kyron got the early workload. Akers kind of got some late workload. How do you handle the running back situation here? We thought the Vegas told us this Akers thing was happening, right? They set his rushing line at 750 yards, and we didn't get it. We're like, why would the RB1 for the Rams only have 750 yards? He looks like a stud. And then he plays behind Kyron in week 1.
I know, yeah. So it's like the way I look at it is almost all my leagues are either full. I don't have any standard leagues. So if Kyron Williams is going to come out for if Cam Akers is going to come out for pass plays for Kyron Williams, then Kyron Williams is the guy I want outright. Yeah. So I just straight up rank right now, the rest of the season, Kyron Williams over Cam Akers. That's I mean, there's no other way to look at it for me.
Yeah, I would agree.
If you play standard, then yeah, sure. Cam Akers, awesome.
Jets, Cowboys. Cowboys are given 9.39 game total. This was supposed to be the game of the week. Unfortunately, now it's Zach Wilson versus Dallas. I don't think the Jets offense is going to be able to do too much here against the Cowboys. We did have a Garrett Wilson trade question a little bit early if you want to scroll up and find that one, Coop. But Jets running game looked great. Breece Hall looked fast. Dalvin Cook looked good. But I just don't know. Yeah, I think the Cowboys are about to get back-to-back New York teams and just absolutely hammer them here. So,
yeah, Cowboys, man, kind of a lucky pull here. But, hey, maybe Zach Wilson can cover that spread. But I'm not sure I'm putting money on it. And I just want to say real quick, John, did you see that bar in Wisconsin?
Yeah, free beer for the Packers to lose. Everyone started drinking. Yeah,
everyone started drinking like crazy, and then they all had to pay those tabs. That is hilarious. But anyway, CeeDee Lamb, just want to know real quick, CeeDee Lamb back to playing in the slot, and he's in that Cooper Kupp Godwin role I described earlier, where he led the team in slot snaps. No one else even really played in the slot. And then when they went to 2 wide, it was him and Gallup, and Cooks came out. But even then, like Cook, you can't really judge this game because it was not a game. So
yeah.
And the other one, Ferguson. I have a lot of questions on Ferguson. People seem to like him, but he only ran 14 routes. Peyton Hendershot ran 12, and you say, oh, well, they pulled Ferguson for Hendershot. They didn't really. Ferguson played 41 snaps and only ran 14 routes. So we got to see what happens in this game. Ferguson might be a guy I'm dropping next week.
Yeah. Garrett Wilson, where do you rank him now?
You got to move him down. You got to move him down to like if Zach Wilson was the quarterback, we would be drafting Garrett Wilson's probably the end of the second, beginning of the third. So you got to move all the Olaves and the Waddles ahead.
You would probably draft them where Drake London was drafted, right?
That's what I'm saying. You got to move Olave, Waddle.
Would you trade Garrett Wilson and Gabe Davis for Stephon Diggs? I would, I think, at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. For that question in the chat, for sure. Yeah, sure. Definitely do that.
Commanders, Broncos at home, given 3.5. It's a 38.5 game total here.
Yeah.
Broncos, listen, Javonte looked good. I get that there was a split there. He got the early workload, and then it kind of gave him some rest. Sutton, obviously the lead guy there. Dolchik hurt. Judy hurt. So, break it down for us here, Coop.
Yeah, so this is the whole thing is kind of gross on the Broncos side. Besides Sutton, I think Javonte Williams, the fact that he split snaps evenly with Samaje Perine is great news for him and the people that drafted him, because that's only going to go up.
Yeah,
in this situation, he's just the better player. And you notice that even though Pirine played more pass snaps, they still made an effort to get Williams receptions because he's a great pass catcher. So great news for Javonte Williams. And then, Cortland Sutton. This, as crazy as it sounds, this week was great news for Jerry Jeudy. Regardless of the injury, nobody came up and showed out.
Right.
No, and the big concern was that Marvin Mims might arrive and be the guy. Marvin Mims was the wide receiver 4
little Jordan Humphrey, everybody.
Jordan Humphrey and Brandon Johnson. So I think that Jerry Jeudy, when he's back, he just goes right back into being the guy. Dulcich out. We're not starting Trotman under any situation. He would need to totally transform as a player. Maybe he will. We'll have to see it this week. On the other side of the ball, Commanders, McLaurin and Dotson, great snap shares. McLaurin's obviously fine. You get him in there. Samuel in the slot. Logan Thomas might be back, so keep an eye on him. He looked pretty good this week.
Yeah.
Played a ton of wide receiver snaps. Not only is it Ron Rivera who loves him, but Eric Bieniemy's got a ton of tight end tricks up his sleeve from playing with Travis Kelce. So let's get to Sunday Night Football.
Sunday Night Football here. Patriots, Dolphins again. We had a question about the hurricane hitting New England here. Does that downgrade the Dolphins? We'll have to wait and see what the weather looks like, but it is Sunday night, so you have to make some of these decisions before roster lock at 1 p.m. But if we're going to get hit by a hurricane on Sunday, then you probably can't play or at least look for other options. We've seen what happens when they can't throw a football.
Yeah, do you know I live 10 minutes from the stadium? There's been thunder here every day for 5 days straight.
Oh yeah, it's still raining. I live outside Boston. It's still raining.
I know you're north, you're covering it from the north, I'm from the south, and it's been raining every single day. So Kendrick Bourne looked interesting. The problem with the Pats is they get so many injuries, right? Ramondre's banged up, Juju's banged up, Gesicki has the shoulder, Devontae Parker's out. So we liked what we saw from the guys this week, and those are the guys that you want to trust. Like if you're going to start anybody against the Dolphins, but who knows, man? And I'll tell you what, with the Tyreek and 2 other guys, Raheem Mostert, we want to see what it looks like with A-Chain. With Durham Smythe, I liked his usage. You just don't start him against the Patriots because Kyle Duggar is a killer. If Kyle Duggar takes Dallas Goedert out of the game, he's going to take Durham Smythe and dump him in the Boston Harbor like a bag of tea. So, don't worry about that. Let's go to Monday night, John.
Yeah, Saints Panthers. Panthers are getting 3 at home. It's a 40 game total here. I like Jamal Williams a lot in this matchup. We just saw Atlanta run all over Carolina with 2 running backs. I think Williams is going to be a guy that's just going to get a lot of work here against Carolina. Yeah,
it looks like the NFL was like, should we put 1 good game on Monday night? And they said, now let's just put 2 bad games.
2 bad games separated them by an hour. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
That'll even it out, right? Yeah. So Olave, Michael Thomas. I'm where I was starting Michael Thomas last week, I'm going to start him again. If I didn't start him last week and I had better options, then I'm not going to start him again. He played a lot of snaps, got some targets, but it's Olave and MT is a full snap share, and Shaheed is exactly what we thought he would be, a part-time field stretcher, but he made a big play. He made a couple of big plays. Yeah. And that's great for best ball. We were drafting him in best ball. He's a great best ball player. Juwan Johnson is the loser of the bunch because you were hoping that one of those guys wouldn't be good. Olave, MT, Shaheed, at least. If they're all going to be good, it's going to hurt Juwan, and Alvin Kamara is going to come back and hurt things even worse. On the other side, the Panthers, Marshall, Thielen, Mingo, monster snap shares, 69, 68, 67 snaps. Those are the 3 guys for now. We'll see what happens when Chark comes back.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders got all the important work, the goal line. He got, when back was against the wall, they got 6 targets. So, but Chuba looked pretty good. And then Hayden Hurst, he got the targets, but only a 50% snap share. So a lot of question marks with the tight ends. We're going to sort it out. 1 more game is going to help us really figure out where to rank Hunter Henry and Hayden Hurst and all these guys next week.
Yeah, a couple questions. Last game here. Browns Steelers. Steelers getting 2 at home, 39.5 game total here. Again, nobody really looked great in either of these 2 games here.
Yeah, pretty rough, but I think the Browns look good. Steelers, if it weren't for the Giants and the complete washout, we'd be talking about how bad the Steelers looked because
Nick Chubb looked good, by the way.
Nick Chubb looked awesome, man. Nick Chubb looked awesome. And the thing is, Hayden Winks pointed out that even though the split at the end of the day was kind of even, Jerome Ford, 73% of his touches came in garbage time.
Sure.
So Nick Chubb fully wheels up. Amari Cooper looked good, but he got banged up. Elijah Moore and DPJ, they all played a full snap share, so we can't crown anybody the king yet. But you got to be feeling good about Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
And David Njoku, real concerning. Blocked on 17% of his pass plays. That is in Yike Town territory. So I've got him with the yellow tape. If he does it again this week, we're done with him.
Yeah.
On the other side, they lost Deontay. Pat Freiermuth, you got to keep an eye on him.
Allen Robinson actually was productive.
Yeah, Allen Robinson. I mean,
of all players.
and the thing is with Deontay out, I mean, and if Deontay and Freiermuth are out, now we're definitely talking. I mean, showdown slate, potentially even bench spot. I don't know,
Yeah.
man. People hate to hear it, but you know what? Sometimes guys can be good and come back and be good. So there you go. The Jalen Warren Najee split. We've talked to death, but we don't really have time right now, John. So we'll have to get into that as the week progresses.
Yeah, I'm throwing the link to Alarm Fantasy Football because that's coming up next. Coop, Howard, and Britt, carry your questions over, guys. They'll answer them for you here on Alarm Fantasy Football. This is the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show. We'll be back next week. Catch Coop and I live tomorrow night, Thursday, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. We're taking you into Thursday Night Football. Like and subscribe to the channel. Get the notifications when we go live, and we will catch you all next week. Good luck, everybody.